Good morning, members of the legislature. I am pleased to present you with Judiciary 101. Some of you may be new to the legislature and not familiar with the judicial branch or the court system. We hope to provide you with some court basics that may be useful to you as you consider the judiciary's budget requests or legislation related to the judiciary. For those of you who are already familiar with the judiciary, we hope this will serve as a refresher. In thinking about court basics, please begin by thinking about trials, such as maybe you've seen on TV or in movies. Trials in New Mexico are conducted primarily by magistrate courts and district courts. Magistrate courts are courts of what we call limited jurisdiction. This means they can only hear certain types of cases. District courts, on the other hand, are courts of general jurisdiction. This means they have no limits. They can hear all types of civil cases with no limits in the amount of money that can be awarded. They can hear all types of criminal cases from the lowest misdemeanor to the highest degree of felony, such as first-degree murder cases. They also hear other cases, such as appeals from magistrate courts. There are also other courts, such as the Metropolitan Court. Think of it as a magistrate court in many respects. However, it does have, it's required that judges who sit on the Metropolitan Court must be attorneys, and this is also the busiest court in the state. We have other courts, such as municipal courts, that are governed by their local cities, but they are nevertheless part of the judiciary in New Mexico. Magistrate courts and district courts, as I have described them, are organized into 13 judicial districts throughout New Mexico. There is a map in the budget book that you should have on page 17, which is color-coded, showing the 13 judicial districts. And for example, if you look at the first judicial district on page 17, which this consists of Santa Fe County, Los Alamos County, and Rio Arriba County. There is a magistrate court and a district court in each county. In Rio Arriba County, there is a district courthouse in Tierra Maria with magistrate courts in Espanola and Chama. Now, within each district, the legislature wisely consolidated the magistrate courts into the district courts for operational and administrative purposes. The administrative authority for each judicial district, for the district courts and the magistrate courts, is the chief judge of that district. Now, I urge you to look at the map that I just showed you and see where the magistrate courts and district courts are located in your own district. Now, sitting above the district courts throughout the state are the Court of Appeals. It consists of 10 judges and sits in Santa Fe and Albuquerque, with a chief judge as the administrative head. Our New Mexico Constitution affords everyone who goes to court a right to appeal, and the Court of Appeals hears appeals from district courts throughout the state, civil cases and criminal cases, and other miscellaneous cases. And really, the Court of Appeals is where most of the appeals throughout the state are heard and finalized. As a former member and chief of this court, I can tell you that this court carries a very significant caseload. Sitting above the Court of Appeals is the Supreme Court, which consists of 5 justices sitting in Santa Fe, and I am the Chief Justice, meaning I am the administrative head of not only the Supreme Court of the state of New Mexico, but all of the inferior courts throughout the state. We hear cases from the Court of Appeals by certiorari, meaning if someone is dissatisfied with a decision from the Court of Appeals, they can petition our court to hear the case. We may agree to hear the case or not hear the case. We also must hear certain cases in our original jurisdiction, such as first-degree felony cases and PRC cases. We have writ jurisdiction, which means we can issue writs to courts, judicial bodies, administrative bodies throughout the state of various kinds. You may have read about cases brought to the Supreme Court dealing with elections, for example, and other matters during this time of the pandemic. The Supreme Court also exercises superintending control over all inferior courts throughout the state of New Mexico, and it is responsible for disciplinary matters that are brought against all judges and attorneys throughout the state of New Mexico. Now, you may have heard about the term unified budget. There is a unified budget for the judiciary in New Mexico, but it wasn't always so. At one time, each court came to this body asking for its own budget, independent of what any other court was doing. Now, you can imagine that some courts had more legislative clout than others, owing to their size or familiarity with a legislator, and smaller courts not having the same sort of position to obtain funds. This resulted in great disparity in funding of the courts, and the need for unity in presenting in one unified budget for the third branch of government became apparent. Today, there is a single set of budget priorities for the entire judiciary, and which is approved by the Supreme Court, and all budgets submitted by courts to the unified budget must be consistent with these priorities. This process of forming the unified budget begins in the middle of the year. Each judicial district and the Metropolitan Court, through its chief judge, determines what its operational needs are. Please bear in mind that at least 90% of court budgets are payroll costs and cannot be raised or lowered at will. Each court then submits its proposed budget to a budget committee. The budget committee is composed of judges and court executive officers from all across New Mexico. LFC representatives are also invited to observe and participate in the process. Each chief judge then presents its proposed budget to the budget committee, which thoroughly vets the expressed needs and their costs, and to ensure that they are consistent with the approved budget priorities. Each proposed budget is thoroughly scrutinized by everyone attending. This includes judges, chief judges, court executive officers, and AOC personnel and experts. I might add that the AOC budget is also presented to the budget committee, and it too is subjected to the same scrutiny. Needless to say, these are all experts. Judges are not going to pull the wool over other judges concerning their needs, and they know it. After several hearings, a final budget is proposed by the budget committee. The proposed budget is then presented to the Chief Judges Council. The Judiciary's governing board consists of all the 13 chief judges and the Metropolitan Court chief judge, as well as other judges. This was previously called the Chief Judges Council, and it is now called the New Mexico Judicial Council. These chief judges as a body once again reviews the proposed budget, making adjustments and cuts as it deems are appropriate. That's not the end of the process. After the budget is reviewed by the Chief Judges Council, the Supreme Court reviews the proposed budget. The Supreme Court approval follows after its review and scrutiny. Once again, adjustments and cuts can be made. In many cases, they are made. This process results in the unified budget that is before you in the budget book that you have. The budget for each judicial entity is set forth in the summarized chart form for you on pages 14 and 15 of the budget book. As you can see, this is a carefully crafted and vetted budget proposal, looked over by experts at all levels of the judiciary. And it undergoes this scrutiny before it reaches you. One thing that's unique this year is that in this case, owing to the special session that was called, the budgets of all the courts were scrutinized and vetted not once, but 2 times. I hope these opening remarks give you a better perspective on considering the rest of this video. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Artie Pepin. I'm the Director of the Administrative Office of the Court. I know you just heard from Chief Justice Vigil I'm going to talk a little bit about what the courts do, and I'll be back with Chief Justice Vigil at the end to answer your questions live over Zoom. As the Chief Justice explained, the courts are in a pyramid kind of structure with the Supreme Court at the top. The Chief Justice is responsible for running, administering the judicial branch, in addition to being the Chief Justice for the Supreme Court. And underneath him are the courts he mentioned, the Court of Appeals, the District Courts, the Metropolitan Court in Albuquerque, and the Magistrate Courts. Those are the state courts. There are also county courts, probate courts, there's one in every county, and municipal courts. By statute, municipalities can have a municipal court. Those are not funded by state funding that you appropriate. They're funded by their local tax base. You do fund all of the state courts that I mentioned. Not surprisingly, there are different judges for the different levels of court. And the biggest difference in the state court judges are between the magistrates and the other judges. Magistrate judges are not required to be attorneys except in Doña Ana County in Las Cruces by statute. And most significantly, they run in a contested election every 4 years. The other judges run in a contested election one time, and then after that, if they win, they're on a retention election where they're the only one in the election, and they have to get 57% of the votes that are cast. And then they have a 6-year term or an 8-year term, depending on if it's district court or an appellate court. You will see the judges on the ballot with you when you run in your districts, and you'll notice that their districts do not align with your districts at all. I'll ask to see the map, the slide that shows the map, and you'll see a color map there which shows the districts by county. There are 13 judicial districts. 2 of those districts have just one county. That's the 2nd district in Albuquerque and the 3rd district in Las Cruces, Doña Ana County. All the others have 2, 3, or 4 districts. And when those judges run, they're running either in the whole district, so in the 2 or 3 counties that make up a district for district court judges, or in one county. If they're a magistrate judge, they're running in one of those counties and they're elected by county, but they are state court judges. And that's when you'll see them on the ballot with you running in their elections. As I said, I'm the director of the Administrative Office of the Courts. That is the administrative agency. I work for the Supreme Court. And our job is to carry out the administration of the courts. And you will see if you go to a district court and a magistrate court as well, they have staff who do administration there, and all of the statewide administration is done through the Administrative Office of the Courts. We work, as I said, for the Supreme Court, and we're responsible for managing all of the budgets, overseeing human resources on a statewide level, fiscal services, data. Our Judicial Information Division does all the statewide technology because we have a statewide court system. They're done differently in different states, but ours is a statewide, what we call a unified court system. There are a lot of programs within the courts, and the Administrative Office of the Courts does work with all of those programs. There are too many for me to talk about right now. You may be familiar with some of them, such as drug courts, online dispute resolution, ODR has been in the news recently. We do jury, we provide interpreters through our language access services. The best place for you to find out about all those programs would be to look at our annual report. We've just published the most recent annual report, and it's been made available to you. I think a copy was provided to the legislators, but if you don't have a copy or you want to see it, please contact us. You can also find it on our website, nmcourts.gov. And there you'll find a description of what's going on in all of those courts I mentioned and all those programs that are under the umbrella of the Administrative Office of the Courts. At the end of the presentations that are recorded, I'll be here with the Chief Justice to answer any questions you have about juries or how we determine budgets or anything about the courts. First, you're going to hear from judges representing each of those types of state courts that I mentioned. For context, I'll tell you that in the last 10 months, since March to December, since COVID hit, the courts have seen about 85% of the average annual number of filings we would have expected over 10 months. That is, we're about 15% down on new case filings, but they're coming back steadily, and I'm sure by the beginning of the new fiscal year, we'll be back to full caseload. In fact, we think we'll have more than a full caseload because there are some kinds of cases that have been put on hold, and we expect a lot of those cases to be filed and for catch-up. particularly landlord-tenant cases, foreclosure cases, and consumer debt cases. So we'll be busy, but we'll be happy if we're back in our courts and everybody's working together and we're all healthy. So I look forward to talking to you in a little bit after you hear from the judges of the other courts. Thank you very much.
Members of the New Mexico Legislature, my name is Miles Hannessy. I'm the Chief Judge of the New Mexico Court of Appeals. And as you've learned, the Court of Appeals is the intermediate appellate court in New Mexico, situated between the 13 judicial districts in their district courts and the New Mexico Supreme Court. Most of the appeals in the state come to the New Mexico Court of Appeals and not the New Mexico Supreme Court. For example, in fiscal year 19, we resolved 953 appeals. We have a limited number of oral arguments in cases in our courtrooms. Most cases are resolved on the briefs and are resolved by form of a published written opinion. We've been able to resolve cases expeditiously during the pandemic because of the nature of our work being largely written. Our court has 10 Court of Appeal judges. Each of us serve 8-year terms, which are resolved by statewide general elections under Article 6, Section 33B of the New Mexico Constitution. When there's a vacancy on our court, the governor appoints a new judge from a list provided by a judicial nominating commission, and then that appointee runs in the next statewide general election under Article 6, Section 35 of the New Mexico Supreme Court. We're situated in 2 locations. We have a courtroom and facilities located within the Supreme Court building in Santa Fe, and we have the Pamela B. Minsner Court of Appeals Annex building adjacent to the UNM Law School here in Albuquerque. Judge Pam Minsner was a judge on this court for a long time before going to the New Mexico Supreme Court, and she passed away of cancer a number of years ago, and we're honored to have our building named for her. Our facility here in Albuquerque houses 7 of our judges, and 3 of our judges are housed in Santa Fe. We have jurisdiction of all counties statewide. We have about 52 employees, all of whom are working out of Albuquerque and Santa Fe. As most of you know, the New Mexico Constitution provides every non-prevailing litigant with a right of appeal, and that constitutional right is where our cases come from, people that exercise those rights. We resolve civil cases such as business disputes, divorces, child custody, zoning. We resolve administrative cases after they're resolved by state agencies, but not the PRC, which goes straight to the New Mexico Supreme Court. We have a heavy criminal docket, misdemeanor, felony cases, plus intermediate rulings in criminal cases are related to admissibility of evidence, motions to change place of trial, and things of that nature. In 2017, our court's jurisdiction was expanded to review the grant or denial of release pending trial of inmates, and also our jurisdiction was expanded to resolve some appeals from Metropolitan Court, which used to be within the purview of District Court. Thank you for your time and your service to the state of New Mexico.
Greetings, esteemed members of the New Mexico House of Representatives and New Mexico Senate. I am Conrad Perea, a district court judge in the 3rd Judicial District, Doña Ana County. During the challenges of the past year, your courthouses have been a symbol of continuity of government. It is the responsibility of our judiciary to ensure that our citizenry sees that our government is still at work and that justice will be done. Our doors have remained opened, and careful compliance with COVID-19 protocols and with safety to our employees and our customers is a priority. We continue to fulfill our responsibilities to the state of New Mexico. Members, the first question I'd like to ask is, why do we have district courts? The American Bar Association says we need courts to interpret and apply the law when parties dispute. In that way, courts take law out of dry and dusty law books and make it a part of the living fabric of our lives. Courts apply the law to the specific controversies brought before them. Question number 2 is, what do our district courts do and what are they responsible for? I appreciate the opportunity to present to you the functions of our New Mexico district courts. Our district courts are courts of general jurisdiction which hold jury trials. We hear and determine adult and juvenile criminal cases as well as civil matters to include domestic relations, contract disputes, and personal injury litigation. We hear different types of cases to include torts, contracts, real property rights, estates, mental health issues, and appeals from administrative agencies and lower courts. We have 99 district court judges in New Mexico serving in 13 judicial districts. The district courts are responsible for supervisory control of the magistrate court judges in our state. There are 67 magistrate court judges. The criminal cases are a big aspect of our district courts. At the end of fiscal year 2020, there were 24,300 plus cases still pending. In fiscal year 2020, there were 521 jury trials and 127 non-jury trials that were held. When we talk about criminal cases, we talk about many aspects to include petitions for review of bond conditions of release, to include pretrial detention hearings for those that may be deemed dangerous. We hear felony homicides, felony crimes against persons, felony crimes against property, drug offenses, felony DWI offenses, sex offenses, domestic violence, vehicular homicides, and lower court appeals that come from our courts where the dispute is now brought forth before us. There are times also that we hear misdemeanor cases when these cases do not quite develop into felonies. The district court also hears juvenile cases. At the end of fiscal year 2020, 1,180 plus cases were pending. There is also a category of juvenile cases called youthful offenders. There we will hear youthful offender homicides, youthful offender crimes against persons, crimes against property, public safety offenses, and sexual offenses. We then take on civil cases, and the district courts have numerous civil cases that are filed to resolve disputes. At the end of fiscal year 2020, there were 79,488 cases pending in our district courts. In 2020, 42 jury trials were held and 209 non-jury trials were held. When we discuss civil cases, there are civil appeals, criminal record expungements, which is a new law that has come into effect and is growing as we speak. There are license revocation appeals, election code disputes, extreme risk firearm protection orders that are issued by the district court at the request of parties. There are lower court competency hearings that are held in our district courts. Name changes, public health orders that we are now living with in this time and day and age. There are tax cases, contract cases, debt and money due, real estate issues, and student loans. As part of our civil docket, there are domestic relations cases. These too number greatly. There are child support cases, child support enforcement, custody and visitation, dissolution of marriage, domestic kinship guardianship, domestic violence, and parentage. Estate cases are also a part of civil cases. There are also juvenile cases that deal with juvenile civil. These are abuse and neglect cases, juvenile adoptions, juvenile termination of parental rights, juvenile emancipation, juvenile mental health, juvenile substance abuse and commitment. Another aspect of our civil cases are sequestered hearings. Now, sequestered hearings are hearings in which the parties are protected. No one is allowed into the courtroom. The files are sealed. They are protected so that people do not know exactly what is the nature of these hearings. Another type of civil case is a tort. A tort can be defined as a crime against an individual. There are automobile torts where in a car crash, one driver hits another driver, causing damage and causing injury. That would be a tort of one individual committing a tort against another. In the state of New Mexico, water is our biggest concern. And with that, our district courts handle are water cases. There are many agreements regarding water, many acknowledgments, many acequias that have been developed, many watersheds that have been developed. Our district courts handle those so that we can have water for our future. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your service to our state of New Mexico, and we at the district courts will continue to serve our state and you. Thank you very much.
Legislators, I'm Sandra Engel, former Chief Judge of Metropolitan Court and currently a sitting judge on the criminal bench here in Metro and have been for over 14 years. I want to not only thank you for the opportunity to present about our court, but also to let you know that at the end of this presentation, I will be putting my cell number and email up, and I'd love for you to feel free to contact me with any questions you may have anytime. Metro Court was created by you as state legislators around 40 years ago. The legislation combined magistrate, municipal, and small claims courts in one county. And for our court, this decision was based on the fact that Bernalillo County is and continues to be the largest county with over 500,000 citizens to serve. The legislation also included the requirement that all of the judges were to be attorneys, which is different than the magistrate courts. At Metro Court, we have 19 judges, 16 criminal and 3 civil. We are the busiest court in the state. We handle traffic tickets, animal control cases, domestic violence cases, DWIs, and so many other offenses. A misdemeanor is an offense which carries jail time of up to 364 days in jail per offense. If an offense carries more than 364 days in custody, it's a felony offense, and it's tried over in the district court across the street with Judge Whitaker's judges. However, the initial phases of the felony cases are also handled here in Metro. Let me explain. When a person is arrested for a misdemeanor or a felony case, they're seen by the Metro Court judges at what we call custody arraignment or felony first appearances. Those are the cases you see on the news where the jail has the defendant in orange up on the video screen. In those cases, our responsibility is to set bond or release on their own recognizance and to set conditions of release such as pretrial services, no contact with the alleged victim, you can't drive without an ignition interlock, etc. After the judge has set conditions of release on the felony, the case is then set for a preliminary examination in Metro Court. This is a hearing where we listen to the testimony of witnesses and we hear evidence and decide if the state has established that there is probable cause to bind the case over to the district court for trial. For our misdemeanor and felony cases, we have a number of specialty courts, 11 in total, that act as diversion courts, where an individual can get focused treatment to address his or her specific issues that contributed to their being in the justice system. We have courts that focus on the issues with veterans, Native Americans, repeat offenders, mentally ill and homeless populations, animal abusers, and domestic violence abusers. In partnership with our community providers, we offer an extensive array of rehabilitative services, substance abuse counseling, parenting classes, DWI school, counseling for post-traumatic stress disorder, sweat lodges, you name it, we offer it. These specialty courts have proven to not only be cost-effective, but also quite successful in addressing some of these low-level offenses, and the overall recidivism rate, or rate of reoffending, is very low for people completing these programs. Our civil division is one of the busiest civil courts in the state. They handle all money dispute cases under a $10,000 limit, landlord-tenant disputes, and a variety of other issues. They've created a wonderful mediation program, which we're asking for help funding this year, where the mediators can help the parties work out the disputes among themselves and come to an agreed upon resolution instead of going in front of the judge to make that decision. The community is very pleased with our mediation program, and we're looking forward to expanding that this year as the number of cases is increasing, especially with the pandemic. Our court employs over 330 employees, and we have so many other divisions in our court that help make this court such a success. We have a robust self-help division that acts as a bridge to the pro se litigant or unrepresented party. We have a jury division which moves several hundred jurors through the court each week during a normal non-pandemic time. And we have our own courthouse security, which is different from the other courts, which have all of their courthouse security provided for by the counties. We have to pay for our own security, and we make this a budget request and priority in the past, but we'll also do it again this session, as the courthouse security for the busiest court in the state is of utmost importance, especially in today's climate. We also have our own probation and pretrial division. Unlike any of the other courts who all rely on state probation and parole for that service, we manage and fund our own probation department and often ask for your financial support in that area as well. This is just a small window into all the services we're able to provide the citizens of Bernalillo County, and I look forward to speaking with any of you that need more information. I look forward to seeing the faces of those that I already know and to those new faces of you that have just recently joined us. Thank you so much for your continued support of Metropolitan Court and for your service to all of us here in New Mexico.
I'm Judge John Chavez, one of 3 magistrate judges in Valencia County and the presiding judge of a 1-judge court in Belen, New Mexico. I'm one of 66 magistrate judges that serve across our state in every county, with the exception of Bernalillo County, which houses our state's only Metropolitan Court. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to share a bit of information about magistrate courts today. A magistrate judge has county-wide jurisdiction for misdemeanor cases, which include shoplifting, first through third offense DWIs, and domestic violence cases, just to name a few. These cases begin in magistrate court and are decided in magistrate court, up to and including a jury trial if appropriate. More serious matters, felony cases such as drug trafficking, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, kidnapping, or murder all begin in magistrate court. Magistrate judges advise these defendants of their rights, advise them of the specific charges, and oversee the assignment or entry of a defense attorney. While these cases will ultimately be decided in district court, magistrate judges conduct on-the-record preliminary examinations, which are special hearings on evidence to determine if probable cause exists for a charged felony. Beyond misdemeanor and felony cases, magistrate judges have county-wide and adjoining county jurisdiction for traffic offenses and game and fish violations. Interestingly, beyond what could be seen as typical law enforcement, cases heard in magistrate court include those brought by the Livestock Board, State Park Rangers, and Construction Industries Division, among others. Needless to say, there is seldom a dull day in magistrate court. On the civil side, magistrate courts have jurisdiction of cases up to $10,000. These can include contract breaches, tort claims, consumer loan, and landlord-tenant cases. While these cases make up a smaller percentage of our overall caseload, they are generally emotionally charged and often involve self-represented litigants. Magistrate judges also review and approve search and arrest warrants. This is a critical constitution that we judges take very seriously. Magistrate judges, like many judges and justices throughout the judiciary, give generously of their time and their talent. Many serve as judges on specialty courts like DWI Drug Court. Likewise, many volunteer to sit on various boards and commissions that facilitate the business of the judiciary. While Metropolitan, District Court, and Court of Appeals judges and Supreme Court justices are elected one time and then stand for retention, magistrate judges run for election every 4 years in partisan elections. While arguments can be made for and against this practice, it does ensure that magistrate judges maintain relationships within the community they serve. If you have not had the opportunity to visit the magistrate court in your county, I would encourage you to do so. Our magistrate judges come from a variety of backgrounds to include former military, law enforcement, banking, farming, teaching, and many are attorneys as well. As such, our magistrate judges bring enormous experiential diversity to the bench. Our courts are staffed with court clerks who are dedicated public servants and very deserving of our thanks and appreciation as well. In rural New Mexico, it is the magistrate judge and court staff that serve as the face of the judiciary. As members of the judiciary and members of our communities, we are proud to serve the people of New Mexico and to uphold the laws of our great state.
In closing, I especially want to thank your chair, Representative Lundstrom. She is the one who requested that we conduct this training so that you, as members of this committee, have an understanding of how the judiciary operates and constructs its budget requests so that you can be better informed. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of this committee, for considering our requests.